A very good morning to all of you. Welcome to today's news analysis. We are doing the Indian Express Papers Chandigarh edition. Now, let me tell you the topics that we are covering. We're doing the entire newspaper, but some topics are obviously more important. So, one is about the revocation of Article 370, which was challenged at the Supreme Court. So, we are expecting a verdict on it today. Then, there was an opinion on gene cell therapy. So, what is a gene cell therapy? What is its relevance for India? Why is it important? So that article is of course important. That needs to be prepared from GS3 point of view. Then another compelling theme of the news analysis today is the high subsidy spend of the government and how it affects the welfareism and of course the fiscal health. So there is one article from, one statement from the vice president. And other than that, of course, there is an editorial. And there is a very interesting expression used known as the 3 Fs. Subsidies on 3 Fs. That is fuel, fertilizer, and food. Combined, it is rupees 5,31,000 crores, roughly. 5,30,900 something crores. So that is 5,31,000 crores. So these are the main things. And yes, one more thing was there. There was a mention of Martand Sun Temple. Martand Sun Temple belonging to the medieval age in Jammu and Kashmir. So that was there. And in that same article, it was talking about Archaeological Survey of India's definition of non-living monuments. So we can prepare that. Now, if we are talking about Kashmir from art and culture point of view, of course, then some important things are there. For example, Raj Tarangani of Kalhan was written, and that in turn mentions about Martand Sun Temple, some of the temples that were destroyed. Then we have a mystic Shaivite saint known as Laleshwari, so that analysis can be prepared. Right, Laleshwari. And then Zainul Abidin, the Akbar of Kashmir, his secular policies, his goodwill. So that again can be prepared. Okay, now coming to the news analysis moving forward. So Chhattisgarh gets its new CM, Vishnu Deo Sahai. So he belongs to the tribal community. Okay, so that's it from this news. Next we come to 370 verdict. So overall, we don't really have to go into the analysis because again, the verdict will change a lot of things. So main thing was, first of all, there was issues with Article 370 and thereby the Article 370 was revoked. It provided for a temporary arrangement of governance, a linkage between Jammu and Kashmir and the union government at the center. So it was a linkage between them. It came as a consequence of instrument of accession, and eventually Article 370 came up. It provided for a framework of governance in Jammu and Kashmir. So this was revoked. The manner in which it was revoked has been challenged at the Supreme Court. So the thing was that Article 373, Section 3, it says that the Constituent Assembly of Jammu and Kashmir, the Article 370 can be changed or it can be revoked by the President on the recommendations of Constituent Assembly of Jammu and Kashmir. Getting my point? So there has to be a Constituent Assembly. It gives its recommendations to the President, and thereby the President can revoke or make changes to the 370. So that was the provision. Okay. Before the revocation in 2019, Parliament, there was an amendment made to the Constitution under Article 367 of the Constitution. 367 said it provided for the interpretation of various terms of the Constitution. So that amendment was made, and thereby what was done was, it said that Constituent Assembly cannot be there. It is not there. It is not feasible to be there. So Legislative Assembly of the Jammu and Kashmir was deemed as Constituent Assembly. Now, the governor over there in Kashmir at that time And because there was no government over there, so he put this into suspended animation. That is, the MLAs are there, but there is no government. So that meant that this being in suspended animation, this became president's rule, or the governor's rule actually. Okay. And governor is the agent of the president. So by this virtue, the governor becomes legislative assembly. Governor can make laws and he's running the government, and legislative assembly was the constituent assembly. So this was made viable via the changes made in Article 367 of the Constitution. Okay. And thereby, since president is the constituent assembly, the president is, he recommends it to himself, and thereby the constitution, 370 is revoked. Okay, the special provisions for Jammu and Kashmir are revoked. Okay, so that's it actually. That innovation is being challenged at the Supreme Court level, and of course the verdict will be today. Okay, move to the next news. So local news over here. Okay. Yeah. Road accidents taking place, what mitigation measures need to be taken, or you are, let's say, a case study also in your place, lot of accidents are taking place, you're conscious, you have been tasked to make a policy as to how the accidents can be reduced. So something like that can be asked in the mains paper. Okay, so we have for Punjab and Haryana, so one, there is this Sadak Surakhya force is written. So it means that a specialized force where more accidents are like taking place. So for that, there is a force. Plus then there is this ambulances would be there. Then there is this emergency helpline. Then re-engineering of roads can also be mentioned, identifying the dark spots, so those areas where accidents are more likely to take place, addressing them, identifying best practices. Those are certain steps that can be taken. So this was the article I was telling you. The Vice President calls for debates on freebies. We have an editorial also on the same topic. So that time we will cover it. Okay. This is about Jammu and Kashmir now. House panel recommends prayers, rituals at protected sites of religious significance. The image that you see is that of Martand Sun Temple. This temple was built, it was commissioned by Karkotia dynasty. The king was Lalitaditya Mukta Pida around 725-753 AD. And we have an account of all this from Raj Tarangani. It's a comprehensive history, one of the modern ways of writing history, written during 1100 AD, 1100, this time period, by Kalan. Then later on, iterations were made to this work. Now this Raj Tarangani has like 3 blocks, 3 waves of books. So the third part is the one which is mainly talking about Kashmir with a lot of accuracy, facts and figures. More recent times, past a bit previous time of Jammu and Kashmir. So second one talks about Lalitaditya Muktapida, etc. And the first one is pretty vague. It is just to create a connect between, let's say, from the Mauryan times to the contemporary present times of Kalan. So the third wave is referring to that part. Third volume is leading to that path. Okay, so that part is done. Raj Tarangani, you need to prepare a note on that. It's written by Kalan, so that is for prelims. Okay. Next, we talked about the House panel. So the House panel, which is parliamentary panel, so it has advised, it has told the Archaeological Survey of India that identify the list of ancient sites, ancient temples, ancient places where prayers can be permitted, the possibility of permitting prayers in that. Okay. Now, one of the issues that has come up, if that ASI works on this, there are a list of sites like Martand Sun Temple, which they have declared as non-living monuments. Non-living monuments. They're temples which were not operational or where prayers were not taking place when ASI came into being. So in those instances, according to the ASI, the prayer possibility of praying or having those ceremonies is not permissible. But if it was happening after the commissioning of ASI, it was happening, prayers were taking place during the time and afterwards also, then it is permissible. Then it is deemed as a living monument. So Martand Sun Temple and many other uh, temples would then open up. So the conservation part may suffer because of that. Okay, so I've talked about Kalan, I've talked about the temple, the dynasty, Karkotia dynasty, king was Lalita Datya. Now, besides this, for example, this temple, the temple that is Martand Temple, this was destroyed by Sikandar Shah Miri in 14th century. So he belonged to the Shah Miri dynasty, Shah Mir dynasty over here. And of course, he destroyed a lot of temples, and an account has been mentioned in Jona Raja's Raj Tarangini. So same under Raj Tarangini, later editions were made by Jona Raja. So a lot of temples were built, people were upset. Then his son takes over the charge, Zainul Abidin, and he was known as a liberal. He gave a lot of freedoms. There was communal harmony during his time period. Right? And he is known as the Akbar of this time. Now you can find the notes on Zainul Abidin very easily, and you can see the importance that various websites have covered Zainul Abidin. Okay, so Zainul Abidin is done. Then we have Laleshwari, right? The famous Shaivite saint, which is also known as Lal Ded. Previously, some movie had also come, and the cast had come onto this Kapil Sharma show also recently. So you can read easily on Laleshwari also her important compositions, which are known as Lal Waks. And then one more important personality with Kashmir is Didda. So she was known as Catherine of Kashmir. She was a ruler of Kashmir, woman ruler, between time period 980 to 1003 CE. So very important, because a woman ruler which ruled with whose rule was actually appreciated, and Kalan belonged to her time period, a bit afterwards actually. 1046 is somewhere when this thing comes. So you can see a lot of articles are there about Jidda also. Now we come to the editorial opinion section. Okay. So basic the first point article over here is subsidies versus welfare. So main concern is the recently the government called for us supplementary grant seeking more allocations for the fertilizer subsidy, food subsidy, etc. For example, Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Anna Yojana was there, so that was extended. Fertilizer subsidy, that was extended. So supplementary grants were sought for that. So the concern is that fiscal deficit targets we are likely to breach because of all this, and the subsidy bill is unsustainable. Here there is a mention of 3F, that is fertilizer. So fertilizer is there, food is there, fuel is there, 3 Fs. So this combined bill is somewhere around 5,31,000 crores. This is a huge amount. Now, naturally, when all these subsidies are given, that means there is no capacity creation taking place. Government is borrowing money at the end of the day. Normally when you borrow money, the idea is that an asset should be created. For example, a bridge, ports, etc. Because of this which asset, the capacity creation of the economy increases, and thereby the GDP growth takes place. Not GDP growth takes place. For GDP growth, it is always important to create assets, capital creation, capital formation is required. But these subsidies are, of course, diverting the share of money that should go to the capacity creation, capital formation. Rather, it is going on the revenue expenditure. This is obviously not leading to asset creation. Ultimately, we are borrowing money. More and more interest payment has to be made. And in the long run, eventually the public, the common people are likely to face the burden. Somebody has to pay the price, not today. Today, people are benefiting. Tomorrow, they will have to compromise. So sooner or later, that will catch up. Okay, so that is the one very major concern. So the parliament, whichever political parties are there, when they make these promises, like we talked about the central level, actually state level, with all these elections taking place, more and more of subsidies are being announced. So this is unsustainable, right? That is the main concern. Now, besides this, one more point that has been mentioned over here is that voters want quick results. So voters are given that type of subsidies also, right? Besides, the government is also spending on tangible infrastructure. So things that are visible. For example, we see good roads, bridges, hard infra. You make that investment and very quickly it is visible. But very little investment is being made on human capital, healthcare, education domain, right? So human capital, the resources are not being spent over there, and these are the ones that actually enhances our capability to perform and contribute to the GDP. So one is, of course, allocation-wise, sustainability, fiscal sustainability, and other dimension to this is that human capital is being neglected because this is a long-term initiative where a lot of money is required and gradually the results are seen. Probably it is not seen during 15, 20 years also. Okay, so that's it. Now, what can be done is, of course, more transparency needs to be there, more accountability mechanism should be there. So all those things have to be put in place. Next, we have COP28, right? So COP28, which is taking place in Dubai. So it says it must resolve impasse on fossil fuel. Another vaguely worded declaration will defeat purpose of climate talks. Okay, so very quickly. So initially when the COP28 started in Dubai, well, Prime Minister Modi is in Dubai. Okay, so when it started, so very quickly, good progress was seen. For example, the operationalization of Laws and Development Fund, money going from Dubai and certain other countries. So roughly $700 million of commitments were made. Okay, so this important thing was done. Now the 700 million commitment that has come, this is nowhere close to the goal of $100 billion per year target. So the the developed nations had committed $100 billion per year as part of its climate change obligations. So Green Climate Fund was to be created for that purpose. In fact, if we refer to the most recent IMF report, World Economic Outlook, they say that between now and 2030, $5 trillion are required. 5 trillion. You can imagine how many billions and that's about 5,000 billions are required, and we are getting almost 700 million. That is not even comparable, right? So that is what is required if you want to limit the climate change and we are able to survive with that changes that are taking place to the weather pattern, etc. Okay, so that thing is done. Besides, COP28 is having a global stock taking exercise. It started actually earlier. So, and during the COP20, and so global stock taking is there, which is basically looking at the climate change commitments countries made and where they stand at the moment. So it seems we are breaching that. We'll not be able to meet the target of limiting the climate change to 1.5 degrees Celsius to the pre-industrial levels. In fact, we are already breaching that 1.5 degrees Celsius mark. So global stock taking exercise in that context was important. And one of the things was, of course, we have to reduce emissions, the lead contributor of climate change. And fossil fuels, which includes coal and petroleum, etc. So they contribute about 80% of emissions. 80% of emissions is coming from fossil fuels. Okay. In the COP26 summit, the Glasgow summit, the talk was on coal, that phase down of coal should take place. And India proposed that in that summit itself, that phase down of fossil fuel as a whole should be talked about, not just coal, but as a whole, fossil fuel should be talked about. So in COP26, even that thing was accepted upon. But so that was COP26 2 years back. Now, when we talk about the COP28, it is being said that we are not going to talk about the fossil fuel phase down or phase out. Rather, we are likely to drop that in the final declaration. One of the reasons could be the sensitivity of Dubai, where the session is taking place, and the oil exporting countries, oil cartels. So that could be one of the reasons. And so one is the oil cartels want that, and of course the developing nations also, since they have to bring large number of people out of the trap of poverty, so they are also likely to dilute this provision of fossil fuel phase down or phase out. So that concern is there. So they say that if timelines and if those are not addressed, so if there is a vague statement again, which can be interpreted according to convenience, then the purpose of these climate talks will get defeated. Next, we have very interestingly Mansukh Mandavia, the health minister, is telling us about agricultural initiatives of the government, Ministry of Agriculture initiatives. So he tells us that, and this still we have to do it. So he tells us about Pradhan Mantri Viksit Bharat Sankalp Yatra, which was there in the news, and there were advertisement on this thing. Pradhan Mantri, I'll just write it, Viksit Bharat Sankalp Yatra. So this is nothing, it's Viksit Bharat, Modi's regime. Development has taken place in those areas where development is not taking place. Intensification should be done. Intensification of those schemes should be done in those areas. So that is Viksit Bharat Sankalp Yatra. So as part of the Viksit Bharat Sankalp Yatra, women are issued nano drones. So this is the scheme of the government, nano drones. We all know what nano means, right? Nano drones. Okay, so nano drones would be given. So this will be given to the women self-help groups, and they will be trained in using of drones, etc. And they will be providing drone-based farm services to the agriculture sector. So that would be done. So this drones, use of drones can, again, is one aspect is precision agriculture. For example, release of fertilizers or providing forecast and all those information, right? Observation things. So that can be done. And in return, the women are being utilized, the services of the women, and as a result, women empowerment is also taking place. So one thing that is mentioned is nano drone. The other thing is that Prime Minister Modi's initiative of fertigation. That is, we have limited fertilizer resources, but when we irrigate, why not add fertilizers to the water so that it mixes with the water and the field is fertilized. So that is fertigation. So that is there. And the third scheme that is mentioned here is Pradhan Mantri Krishi Samriddhi Kendras. So this is a scheme whereby the farmers can avail various government schemes. So like this is a Kendra, this is a place where farmers can come and take the benefit of various schemes as per their eligibility. Plus they are made aware of the government schemes. Next we come to paradigm shift in medicine. And this, what shift is taking place? Gene cell therapy and the future of healthcare in India. So one is, of course, we get to know about the gene cell therapy. In fact, we have to prepare an answer on this. So we should have a definition of gene cell therapy. And then how is it relevant in India's context? Okay, so first of all, why are we talking about it? So recently there is authorization of Cas-GV, a drug, which is using gene therapy technique based on CRISPR-Cas9 technique, gene editing therapy, wherein, you know, in UK there were clinical trials taking place for sickle cell patients, and positive results have been seen. So this Cas-GV is based on gene therapy technique. Sickle cell otherwise cannot be treated, so it is being done by, actually it's still not being treated, but there is improvement in health outcomes. Then we have an Indian company, Next CAR19. So this is not a company, it's just a drug that has been made, NEXCAR9. So and recently authorization has been given, and this helps in treating people with blood cancers, leukemia. You know, Rishi Kapoor, former actor, so he died from blood cancer related to lymphocytes, leukemia. So that problem, it cannot be treated. Okay, but we can use genes therapy for that purpose. Now, besides conventional allopathic medicine, which is aimed at managing symptoms. Gene therapy aims at curing the disease. And gene therapy can be used to address various rare diseases, also genetic disorders also, that can also be treated. And these are very chronic diseases with a high cost burden. In India's case, 40 million individuals are affected. That is 4 crores people. Percentage wise, very small, but it is huge in numbers. 4 crore, and 4 crore households are getting affected if you look at it that way. Okay. So now what is gene cell therapy? So gene therapy, it is the introduction of functional genes and repairing the faulty ones. It offers not just treatment, but the potential for cure. Right. So it, you know what, you just take it from the net. I've lost the highlights. I have also shared it on the Telegram in blue color. It is already marked. So there you can read it. So introducing a functional gene. So that gene cell therapy is there. Now, what is its relevance in India's context? So one is, of course, it can be used to treat rare diseases, and there are significant amount of numbers of population in absolute terms who are affected. Right. Then the cost burden is also very high, and thereby even when the government is treating, if it has to allocate the health budget, the focus does not go on the rare diseases, because disproportionate high amount of money is required for treating rare diseases as compared to conventional illnesses. Third point is, we have a lot of tropical country diseases, infectious diseases, dengue, malaria, all these diseases. These can be cured. Infectious diseases can be cured. We can have treatment which we did not have previously using gene cell therapy technique, gene therapy products. In fact, even COVID-19 mRNA vaccines were an example of gene therapy products. Sickle cell is a disease that is affecting the tribal population. If we can somehow find the scale, economies of scale, we can treat so many people at an affordable price. Okay. So infectious diseases can be treated. Then the rise of non-communicable diseases. Demographic and lifestyle changes are leading to non-communicable diseases. Maybe diabetes, maybe cardiovascular cancers are there, right? Cancers are again a lifestyle disease also. So those can be dealt with. And the long-term costs, healthcare costs, as I've discussed earlier, they are very, very high. But gene therapy can provide a better approach, a cost-effective approach. By the way, Cas-JV treatment is unreasonably expensive, at least for India's context. But if we say that in the answer writing, our points, it will be going ahead against our points. Okay. So that's it. Actually, we need to invest more in the gene therapy so that we can also develop the technology. Plus, we can also focus on affordability. In fact, all these drugs that we have, even paracetamol, Disprin, etc., those were expensive at one point of time, but somehow we have been able to rationalize that price. Gene therapy can also be a step in that direction eventually. Okay, next. Ministry of Renewable Energy plans long-term exemption for green hydrogen projects for solar photovoltaic cells. Okay, green hydrogen economy is a term that is there. In fact, you can also always watch my videos, not very big. The basic idea is renewable energy from anyhow, be it solar cells, renewable energy. The problem is storing these energies. Now, one way could be that we can split water, get hydrogen, and then combust it. So fuel cells, cars are based on this technology, right? So fuel cell so we can use fuel cells basically. The fuel cells coming from renewables is known as green hydrogen, right? So that is the basic funda behind it. So now what is happening is Ministry of New and Renewable Energy has basically said that you can import only from trusted manufacturers. So they have a list, and Chinese companies are not part of it. But Chinese have gone very ahead of a lot of things actually technology wise. And people engaging in solar hydrogen projects may be requiring certain equipments like photovoltaic cells, maybe at a more affordable price from China, or the availability of electrolytes for conversion, for splitting of water into hydrogen and oxygen. So that can be imported from China. So Ministry of New and Renewable Energy is looking for long-term exemption on that count. Okay, so that's it actually. FPIs are investing 26,505 crores has come in equities in the first 6 sessions of December. Next. So there is a statement from Hausman, who's from Harvard actually. So he is the founder of ECI, Economic Complexity Index. So he's saying that India has a lot of prospects, but somehow India lags behind when it comes to their indicators. So the progress is not much when it comes to ECI measures the current state of country's productive knowledge. So there that progress is not seen, despite the potential that India has. Further, he has talked about a very important concern that you actually study in your GS3 economy class, initial classes. So it says, how can a country, for example, India, sustain primarily on service sector alone? Right. Service sector is contributing about 60% of our GDP. I'm writing 64 because that's what I learned. And so that is their share of GDP is increasing, but the population that is being absorbed in the service sector is not adequate. It is not labor intensive. About 20-25% population is there. So this is not leading to a job-led growth. This is not sustainable. We need to move towards manufacturing, that too of labor-intensive sectors. So that is important. There's a mention of India's labor-intensive export sectors like apparels, marine products, plastics, gems, and jewelry. So that is something that we need to prioritize. Okay, now we have the explainer section. 370 verdict, what happened in Supreme Court hearings. Right, so explainer is there. Then yeah, all things associated with Kashmir actually, security arrangement and everything. And this one was important for me today. Historic deal by European Union. They have come up with a framework for regulating artificial intelligence. So what they have basically done is, we're referring to the World Economic Forum website now. So they have gone with a risk-based approach. So they have brought 4 categories of risk-based approach according to the AI use case. So one is unacceptable risk. For example, the use of facial recognition, automated facial recognition, or which is basically breaching your data also, breaching your personal privacy also, so that is there. Or the government taking your data, right, for biometrics, so that is there. So unacceptable risk. Then there is high risk. For example, autonomous driving, autonomous cars, etc. So that can be done, but of course with a lot of regulation, and there shall be public. Those techniques should be available to public scrutiny. It's like Tesla opening up its codes. Tesla is a pioneer in self-driving cars, so their codes can be open to public scrutiny. It is also a breach of intellectual property in some ways, and that is what the corporate sector has complained about. Third is medium risk, and last one is low risk. So medium risk can be is basically generative AI is under medium risk. For example, generative AI chatbots. So that can be there, but when they're being operated, people should be made aware that they are actually interacting with an chatbot, an artificial intelligence chatbot. So that should be done. And then there is this low risk framework. That low risk is not mentioned. What constitutes low risk? Maybe facial filters on Instagram, etc. Those can be low risk. Okay, so risk-based, this thing is there, and basically this is not acceptable. Facial one is, by the way, it is if only for police has to identify a criminal, etc. Okay, so these are there, and accordingly, that the codes, etc. that is there, that can be open to scrutiny by the public. That has to be disclosed to the government also. Now, where are other countries standing? So, if you look at the EU has gone by strictly by risk analysis, risk-based approach, and one of the their pillars is general data protection regulations. So, data privacy rights of the citizens. So that is the priority. But in doing so, it has compromised the interest of the innovators, right? So that is the problem. UK, on the other hand, has gone by the light touch approach. So minimal changes. So light touch approach is there. Since it is in a nascent state, more support is required. So light touch. US is trying to go in between rights as well as the light touch approach. India also says they will go that in between kind of route. Okay, so that's